Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my second Midnight Terrors video for you guys, and this one's 4 creepy, true hitchhiking horror stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this lights back off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
This happened about 2 years ago while I was backpacking through Austria.
Okay.
It was my second week on foot, and the exhaustion had really caught up to me. My feet were blistered. I was sweaty, sunburned, and looked like someone who'd been living in the woods for way too long. It was one of those brutally hot days, and after pushing through for hours, I just hit a wall. I was completely drained and decided hitchhiking was the only way I'd make it to the nearest train station. But no luck. Car after car passed me by, and honestly, I couldn't blame them with the way I looked. Finally, a truck pulled over, and I was beyond relieved.
Oh, I bet, because hitchhiking ain't no joke. I would suggest always wearing comfortable padded shoes that aren't going to hurt your feet, and keep wearing nice, cleanish clothes, because if your clothes start to look kind of dirty in spots, nobody won't pick you up because they probably think you're a druggie.
I didn't even hesitate to jump in because, at that point, sitting down was the best thing that had happened all day. I asked the driver if he could drop me at a nearby station so I could catch a train to Vienna, but he said he was heading there himself and offered to take me the whole way, as long as I didn't mind a quick stop to load the truck. I said sure, no problem. He seemed polite, chatty, but not in a weird way, and it actually felt like a lucky break.
Yeah, I wouldn't find that weird at all either. You save your money on a train ticket, you might as well ride with a guy that's going there. But if he says he's got stops to make, hey, you might as well tag along until he gets to that certain location.
We made small talk, and everything felt pretty normal during that first stretch of the drive. When we made our stop, I took a little walk and grabbed some water from a nearby gas station while he loaded the truck. He'd offered me drinks during the ride, but I didn't feel comfortable accepting, so I stuck with my own stuff. Once we hit the road again, things took a weird turn almost immediately. He mentioned the heat and casually said I could take off some layers if I wanted. You know, make yourself comfortable kind of thing. I brushed it off, said I was fine, but he brought it up again. And again. Then he told me I could nap in the back of the truck if I wanted to. That made me tense up a bit. Something about his tone started feeling off, and I decided right then I was getting out at the next gas station. But before I could say anything, he suddenly shouted at me to duck down and hide. He said his stepdad was driving nearby and he didn't want him to see me. That was so random and intense that I instinctively did it. But right after I thought, okay, nope, I really need to get out now. I made up a story about wanting to walk into Vienna to feel like I really earned the trip or whatever, and that I was rested enough thanks to his lift. He said sure, no problem. But then things got even more uncomfortable. Out of nowhere, he looked over at me and said I looked familiar. I just kind of smiled awkwardly, thinking maybe he thought I looked like someone he knew. But then he asked if I'd ever been to a swinger club. I was stunned. I told him no, absolutely not. And then he said, well, do you want to? I'm going to one in Vienna. We could go together. You'd like it. I made it crystal clear that I wasn't interested and asked him again to let me out. And then he just ignored me, reached into his pants and started masturbating right there while driving. I froze. I had no idea what to do, just sat there gripping my backpack, pretending I wasn't seeing what I was seeing, and waiting for a chance to get out.
Oh my God, that is so gross. You just don't know who would pick you up on the side of the road. I was starting to get weird vibes from what this person was describing. Like, you could take some of your layers off if you're getting hot. He's a sexual predator. Any chance you get to get out of that truck, you better take it now before he starts to make things more weirder.
He didn't respond to anything I said, didn't slow down, nothing. But finally, a gas station came into view, and he kind of snapped out of it and asked if I wanted to take a shower with him. I figured that was my shot. I lied and said sure, hoping that pulling into a public place would give me a chance to bolt. The second he stopped the truck, I grabbed my stuff, threw open the door, and ran. Just full-on sprinted across the gas station lot, and didn't stop until I was out of sight. I don't think he followed me, but I didn't take any chances. I just kept going until I found a busier street. Only after I calmed down and could finally breathe again did I realize I left my shoes in the truck. So I walked the last stretch to Vienna barefoot, constantly glancing over my shoulder for that truck. But thankfully I never saw him again.
I'm glad that girl got away from that person. And if she says she left her shoes, I would just say, forget them. You could buy a new pair in town. But Lord have mercy. If she went in with that truck driver's demands or questions, she probably would have been raped in that truck. And the fact that he said he was going to a swingers club, I said, ugh, she don't want to go to that. If you remember what the truck looks like and which direction he was headed, you could have called the cops to go arrest that man, because he's a disgusting man. I'm just glad she got out of there all right and did not get hurt by him.
Let me take you back to the late summer of '93. I was living in Montana at the time, but I had this boyfriend up in British Columbia. And because neither of us had a car, or really any money, we hitchhiked pretty much everywhere. That summer, I had spent all of August with him in this tiny cabin in the mountains. No running water, no phone, and the only neighbors we had were the kind who still had party lines. Eventually, school was starting up again, and I was already 2 days late heading back, but my boyfriend still hadn't come up with bus fare, and my parents were fed up with me, so I figured, screw it. Time to hitchhike back by myself. I packed light, just one backpack and my ID, because I'd already learned the hard way that trying to cross borders without it was a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, it is. They even get after you if you don't even have a birth certificate or boarding pass. And plus, they got to check to make sure you're not no criminal going to another country. And they also got to check your luggage, too, just to make sure you're not carrying any weapons. So it seems like a hassle just to get from one country to another. But once you get cleared, you're basically home free.
Things actually went surprisingly smooth at first. An elderly couple picked me up not far from the cabin and took me all the way to Creston, which is right by the border. After I walked across into the States, this dude picked me up who gave off slightly weird vibes. But all he did was lecture me about the dangers of hitchhiking alone and how I reminded him of his daughter. He dropped me off in Coeur d'Alene, which was already halfway home, and I was thinking, dang, this might actually go better than expected. I kept walking toward the edge of town, hoping for another ride, and after a couple of hours with no luck, I spotted a scrap of cardboard and figured I'd make a sign. Maybe that would help. I was walking faster now, cardboard in hand, when I noticed something moving near the shoulder. Turned out it was a snake, just kind of flopping around, trying to get over the guardrail. I actually like snakes, and this one looked harmless, so I used the cardboard to help him over. Looking back, I probably should have taken that as a sign. Not long after, a car pulled over. My gut always tightened a bit when it was just one guy in the car, but this time there was a kid in the front seat, probably around 12. The guy introduced him as his nephew and said they were heading back to St. Louis from Seattle. He was a little overly friendly, but I figured he wouldn't try anything with a kid in the car. Yeah, I was young and clearly not thinking straight. For the first hour or so, it was chill. We made small talk, and I even had the switchblade my boyfriend gave me tucked in my sleeve just in case.
First of all, if I see a snake on the fence, I wouldn't even go near it. It'll probably wiggle itself over eventually. But also, yeah, that would be creepy if a vehicle just pulls up and it's a man and his nephew. But if they seem like nice folks, you're right with them. That's a good idea. You brought a switchblade. They pull a fastball on you. You better pull it out just to tell them to drop you off somewhere else.
But then the question started getting weird. He asked if I had a boyfriend, what we liked to do, Then he took it straight into the gutter with questions about our favorite positions. I was sitting there thinking, oh no, here we go. I didn't want to set him off, so I played along, trying to keep things neutral while I looked for a way out. He was definitely drinking something stronger than soda, and it was like every mile we drove, he got bolder. At one point, he flat out told me he expected sex in exchange for the ride. Then he smiled and said something about finding a girlfriend for his nephew, too. And that's when I knew I had to get away. Fast. We were about 20 minutes from my town when I came up with a plan. I pretended to be into it, told him I had a friend he'd love, and that we should go straight there when we got to town. I even suggested we stop and grab beer first. I directed him to a gas station a few blocks from my place, and when he went inside, I threw that car door open and bolted down an alley like my life depended on it. I dove into a thick clump of bushes behind a building and curled up tight, clutching my knife and trying not to breathe too loud. I could hear him outside shouting for me, angry, loud, and looking. But he never came down the alley. I stayed there until nightfall, just to be safe, and then I ran the rest of the way home barefoot and covered in leaves. My roommate freaked when she saw me and asked what the hell happened. When I told her the short version, she just stared at me like, "Why didn't you call me? I would have picked you up at the border."
Well, she could have, but if she had a phone. And apparently she didn't think about calling at one of them payphones. She just wanted to get on the road and get back home quick. But yeah, that is really disgusting that somebody picks you up and then they try to get you to offer them sex for the ride. She ain't into that. And I can't believe he just mentioned that in front of his 12-year-old nephew, because he's way too young to even think about doing stuff like that. She did the right thing when they stopped at the gas station and opened up the door and hightailed it and hide in the bush. And luckily that guy did not even think about going there the alleyway. He just wanted to get out of there before somebody reported him. But thank God she got back to her roommate's place. But I know next time that if she tries to do that again, hitchhike, she'll call her roommate first if she's still in college. So something like this will not happen again.
Man, this literally happened like an hour ago, and I still can't fully wrap my head around it. I was driving from Texas to California, just starting the trip, maybe an hour in, when I saw this guy walking along Route 66 with his dog. It was freezing cold, and we were in the middle of absolute nowhere, like miles from the nearest gas station or town. I wasn't in a hurry, so I pulled over and asked if he needed a ride. He said he was trying to get to some small city in Arizona, which wasn't too far out of my way. So I figured, why not? I let him and his pup hop in. At first, he seemed like a totally normal dude. Told me he'd been walking and hitching rides all the way from Mississippi because he'd lost his job and fallen on hard times.
Right now I feel sorry for that dude because if he lost his job, he can't afford either a mortgage or rent on a house. He might as well just sell off the big things that he can't carry and pack clothes and his dog and just start a new life somewhere. But man, I can't believe he hiked that far all the way to Mississippi. I'll be exhausted if I even make it that far. Let's just see what happens next.
I even asked him if he'd eaten that day, and when he said no, I grabbed him something to eat at the next stop. I was really feeling like I'd done a good thing, like those feel-good helping someone out moments you don't get often. Everything was cool for the next couple 100 miles. We were chatting, laughing, and it seemed like he genuinely cared about his dog. Then, somewhere around a gas stop, he casually tells me he talked to his mom while I was filling up, and oops, she's apparently on vacation in LA. So now he's like, "I'll just ride with you to Cali." It was a little weird that the plan changed so suddenly, but I let it go. Then, once we hit Arizona, he started saying some wild stuff about politics and conspiracies, like full-on election denial and weird pedophile ring stuff.
Okay, I'll be like, who in the world did I just pick up? And how in the world did he contact his mother? Did he even have a cell phone on him? I mean, that's just kind of weird. And then he's talking politics and conspiracy theories and pedophile type stuff. I mean, like, oh, Lordy. If he's going to act like that throughout the entire trip, I'll be trying to find a place to drop him off and leave. Because every minute that guy's in his car, he's going to be creeping that guy out more for sure.
I told him I didn't want to get into that, trying to keep things light. That's when the red flags started piling up. He tells me he's going to stop at this house where his 2 girlfriends live. Scratch that. Now it's just 1 girlfriend. And he inherited the house after his mom passed. Said he called ahead, and they were expecting him. Also, he drops in casually that he has mild schizophrenia. And all of a sudden I realized, this dude might not actually know where he's going or what he's doing. And I noticed he didn't have a phone. Like, he wasn't calling anyone. Nothing he'd been saying really lined up anymore. We get to this house in the middle of some small mountain town, and I'm like, hey, want me to wait just in case they're not home? Hoping I could talk him into letting me take him to a shelter instead. Sure enough, he walks up, knocks, comes back, and goes, must have gotten the wrong house. Let's just go to Cali instead. That was my breaking point. I told him gently, man, I don't think you're in a good place mentally right now, and I think your illness might be messing with you. Out of nowhere, he snaps. Says if I bring up his schizophrenia again, he'll kill me.
Okay, at this point, I'll be waiting for him to go to sleep and drop him off at a homeless shelter. Because I would not be tolerating a guy that just keeps on spitting out different locations and don't know what the world he's talking about. And if he threatens to kill me, he's getting out of that truck. But yeah, that would be creepy to experience.
He didn't seem like he meant it. Like it wasn't said in a super aggressive way. But I wasn't about to test it. I calmly told him I couldn't take him all the way to Cali. But I also didn't want to leave him and his dog out in the freezing cold. I offered to take him to a shelter, and he just got out of the car, said, screw it, I'll walk to Cali, and started heading down the road with nothing. No food, no water, and no clear plan. I just sat there for a while, kind of stunned. I mean, I'd spent over 9 hours in a car with this guy, and suddenly it felt like I never knew him at all. I didn't know what else to do. I waited a bit, watched him disappear down the road with his dog, then drove off, hoping to God he and that pup make it somewhere safe.
Oh man, I hope he does get somewhere safe, because if you got a schizophrenic problem, you don't need to be out walking and not knowing where you're going. But man, he was just trying to be nice, and if you didn't tell him about that schizophrenic problem you have, he probably wouldn't be so scared. Yeah, I'm just glad he got him out of that truck before he decided to snap and choke him or something. But that's somebody you do not want to pick up, that's for sure. You always got to make sure the person you pick up on, that they're hitchhiking, is not on drugs. That's one. And don't have any mental problems.
It happened about 10 years ago, back when I was living in Missouri with my boyfriend at the time, Red. We were just 2 broke young adults figuring life out in our little second-floor apartment, scraping by and thinking we were way more grown up than we actually were. Now Red had this best friend named Jim, who lived a few hours up north. They didn't see each other that often, but when they did, it was always an event. Jim was one of those guys who could talk to anybody, full of stories, always chasing the next little adventure. So when he told us he was driving down to visit for the weekend, we didn't think much of it. That is, until he showed up with 2 strangers and a dog. Apparently, on his way down the highway, he spotted a guy and a girl thumbing it on the side of the road and decided to pick them up. I know, red flag. But Jim was just that kind of guy. He saw a couple of folks in need and figured, why not help? Their names were Tammy and Keith, and they were trying to get even farther south. Since it was already late when they got there, and Jim was going to crash on our couch anyway, we figured we could be good people for one night and let them stay in the living room. Looking back, yeah, not the smartest move. But when you're young and overly trusting, logic doesn't always win. That night actually started out fine. We cracked open some cheap drinks, played some games, and ended up inviting our buddy Jack over. Jack was this big Samoan guy. Looked intimidating, but was honestly a sweetheart. Everything felt normal for a while. Then Tammy took her dog out for a walk, and Jack went with her to have a smoke. About 15 minutes later, we heard screeching tires and the kind of cry from a dog that just guts you. We all ran outside, and there was Jack carrying Tammy's dog, with her trailing behind him, crying her eyes out. The poor pup had been hit by a car. He'd run into the street and gotten clipped badly. His back legs weren't working, and you could just tell he was in pain.
Yeah, oh, that's always sad to hear a dog or a cat or any other animal getting hit. You need to grab them and take them to a vet ASAP before they bleed out and die right there in your arms. But yeah, I forgot to mention also that that thing he was doing was a good deed. He was trying to pick up a couple that needed the lift so they won't be walking for a long time. And I don't want to sound mean, but they should have had that dog tied up somewhere so it wouldn't run out into the street.
That's also when we met our upstairs neighbor for the first time. She heard the commotion and came down, asked what was going on, and by some miracle, turned out to be a vet tech. She offered to take the dog to the animal hospital with Tammy, while Jack, being his usual blunt self, muttered that the dog probably wasn't going to make it. Our neighbor didn't hesitate. She and Tammy took off together, and a few hours later Tammy came back alone, her face streaked with tears. The dog didn't make it. Everything shifted after that. The house felt heavy and quiet, the kind of stillness that makes your skin feel too tight. Red and I felt awful for her, so we told them they could stay an extra night or two to get their bearings before continuing on. We were still trying to do the right thing, but by Monday we were back to reality. Jobs, routine, responsibilities. So we told Tammy and Keith they could stay one more night, but they needed to be out during the day. It felt weird leaving strangers in our place alone, you know. When I got home from work that afternoon, Tammy was already waiting on the front steps, smoking and looking like she hadn't slept. As soon as we walked in the door, she told me she needed to talk. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm scared of Keith." I was thrown. I thought they were a couple, but nope. She said she'd only met him the day before Jim picked them up. Said he'd seemed nice at first, but now she was getting nervous. She asked if I'd noticed his backpack. I had, but nothing about it stood out. Then she told me what was inside. Children's clothes. Tiny ones. And she said she caught him sniffing them and laying them out on the ground like he was piecing together a little body. Now that made every hair on my arm stand up. She also said she peeked at his wallet and the ID didn't look like it belonged to him. Whether it was a fake or stolen, she wasn't sure. Then she asked, "Did you see his tattoos?" I had seen them, kind of. Dark ink peeking out from under his sleeves and crawling up his neck. She told me on one arm it said Aryan, and the other said Army. Given that Red was Bengali, and people often assumed he was Arab, that was an immediate concern, especially considering how close this guy had been sleeping to us for the past few nights.
Yeah, that would be a sign of concern right there. He had a lot of baby clothes in his backpack, and ID that don't belong to him. He's probably a pedo and a possible murderer. Man, thank God this woman told her, because if she didn't, they probably would have packed up together and he would have kept on taking her places. Probably murder her, you just don't know.
When Red got home, I filled him in. We both agreed something was seriously off. We didn't want to start a confrontation, so we made the call to just lock the door, go silent, and pretend we weren't home when Keith came back that night. And sure enough, he showed up right around sundown. He knocked, waited, lingered outside for a while. I watched him through the tiniest sliver in the curtain, barely breathing. He hung around our door for almost half an hour before finally walking off down the street. After that, Tammy stayed with us for a few more days. We learned she was only 17 and had run away from home weeks earlier. Losing her dog had broken something in her. Eventually, we convinced her to call her mom. I'll never forget the way she cried when she heard her mom's voice. It was like something heavy finally lifted off her chest. Red and I scraped together enough cash to buy her a bus ticket back home. We dropped her off, hugged her goodbye, and that was the last time we saw her. I still think about her sometimes and wonder if she ever got the fresh start she was hoping for. A few days later, we saw Keith wandering near the river. No dog, no Tammy, just him and that damn backpack. We never saw him again after that, and honestly, I hope we never do.
Yeah, I feel bad for that girl losing her dog. That was like her only close companion she had. But thankfully, she talked to her mom, and this couple helped her get a bus ticket back home and get away from that creep Keith. But man, if you saw him again right here at the river, I would call the cops right then and tell them what you know about this guy and see if they can get him arrested. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications for more Midnight Terrorist content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Corner channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I say that's a wrap, and have a nice day.